Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jaime Kamel. I'm super excited about today's guest. His name is George Kamel. He's the #1 bestselling author. He's a personal finance expert, and he's a member of the Dave Ramsey team. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. How you doing?
George, I missed you. That's why I had to have you back. And you have this new book that I'm super, super excited about. It's talking about the toxicity of money, the money culture. And the name of it's Breaking from Broke. And I wanted to see, what does toxic money culture mean? And why'd you write this book?
Well, I don't know about you, but the way I grew up was you go to school, you get good grades, go to college at all costs, open up a credit card as early as you can, build a credit score, go get a nice new car because you're a college graduate, and stop throwing away money on rent. You got to go get a house, get a house, get a house. And all of a sudden, we're broke up to our eyeballs. We're stressed, we're anxious, we're frustrated. And yet this was the American dream that has been pitched to us for decades. And so I think that the younger generations have a right to be entitled. They're entitled to be enraged by what's going on out there and the lies that were fed to them, and also taking accountability and saying it's not all your fault, but it's your responsibility to do what's next. So I have this wild hunch that this entire money system, this toxic money culture, exists to keep us in the chains and keep us playing these games of the credit card companies and the rewards and the credit score. And I think it's time for a new scoreboard. It's time for a new game where we have control, we have peace, we have options, we have margin. That's what we're all desperately longing for in today's America.
Yeah, isn't the thing that you always say, America's the land of the free and home of the broke?
Absolutely. Because it's true. I love that, right? America. It's the best country. And yet we look out there and we have the highest levels of consumer debt compared to any other country. And so while it's, the land of opportunity, we also have the opportunity to spend like we're in Congress. And that's what we've been doing when you look at consumer debt levels and where people are at today.
Dave Ramsey had a study out there that said 56% of people worry about money daily. That's a new study that you guys had. And then 46% of people are staying up because they're so worried about money. And that's why I think your book is so important, because we're in this rat race, right? Of trying to get out of debt, and we're broke. And I know you personally even had a debt story that maybe you can draw upon to tell us what we can do to get out of debt.
Absolutely. At 23, I was the average George, the average millennial. I had $40,000 in consumer debt between my student loans and credit card debt. And I woke up one day and I was going, I don't even make $40,000. How am I ever going to get out of this? I fell for all of the traps, all of the myths. And so I decided to try a different plan. And the Ramsey plan intersected my life, the 7 baby steps that we teach that we can talk about, Financial Peace University. I went through that course, all 9 lessons. And it sort of unveiled this toxic money culture. And I went, oh yeah, the credit score is kind of an I love debt score. Why do I need a credit score if I'm not going to continually go into debt? And oh my gosh, what if I cut up my credit cards and, said, forget the 5% rotating cash back, and instead used my own money to see how differently I would spend? And following that proven plan, I got out of that consumer debt in 18 months by, cutting down the budget, going and getting 4 side hustles for a short period of time. And I got out of debt. I built up an emergency fund to where I didn't need my credit card as backup anymore. And it was so freeing to get to that place of financial foundation, because I was no longer paying for the past. I was building for the future. And that's what allowed me to begin investing into the work 401k, into Roth IRAs, and to get a house and pay it off early. And I want to tell people, shout from the rooftops, it's still possible in America today, regardless of the headlines, regardless of the housing market, regardless of gas prices and milk prices. You can still get ahead if you're willing to do the work.
So you just mentioned something about credit score. Do you think we need a credit score?
My hot take is that we don't. And I go through this in the book methodically. I did a whole chapter on credit scores in the book. It's actually one of the very first chapters, because I think that's kind of the gateway drug to all of the other debt. Because how do you get a score? Well, you have to have an open line of credit. You have to create an account with a credit card company, or you have to have a student loan or a car payment. And so think about it. When you get rid of your score, what happens? Well, you go, oh my gosh, how am I going to rent a car? Well, every rental car company has a debit card policy. How am I going to rent an apartment? Well, almost every single apartment that I've talked to just says, well, you might need a higher deposit, but no big deal. As long as you have income, you're not a criminal, you can rent here. And I went, okay, what else? Well, the house, that's the big one, right? How am I going to get a house without a credit score? How am I going to get the mortgage? And I actually went through this process myself. I didn't have a credit score because I'd paid off my debt. My score disappeared after, 6 to 12 months. And I went through a process called manual underwriting. So automated underwriting is what every mortgage company uses. They hit a button, your credit score pops up, and they go, all right, here's your rate, here's the loan. With manual underwriting, a real person looks at your financial documents and goes, okay, George is employed, he has no debt, we're going to give him the loan, he's going to get a great rate. And so I did that no score loan back in 2019, and my wife and I pre-decided that we didn't want to have a mortgage hanging around our necks for 30 years. So we did a 15-year mortgage, and we paid it off aggressively in just a couple of years. And my credit score once again disappeared 12 months after that. And so I'm here to tell everyone that you don't need a credit score if you're done with debt. If you want to continually go into debt, well, it's not going to work. And I also want to point out there's a big difference between a bad credit score and no score. A bad credit score means you've been delinquent, you haven't been making payments properly. No score just means you stop playing the debt game altogether. So what you want to aim for is no score, not a bad score.
So you're telling me I could buy a house, I could get a car, I could do all these things the world tells me I can't do without a credit score.
That's right. But the key is you're going to have to pay cash for that car, which means you're not going to go get sold a $50,000 car on a 0% loan. You're going to go buy the $10,000 car that you can afford in cash, and then you're going to upgrade over time. And that's exactly what I did. It wasn't long ago that I had a $6,000 2009 Honda Civic. I bought it in 2017 from a coworker, and I drove that until I had enough money to upgrade to the next car and the next car. That's called delayed gratification. And I think that we've atrophied that muscle in America because of instant gratification. Amazon 2-day shipping, I want it now. Don't tell me I have to wait and save. I can't do that. Not in today's America. Have you seen new car prices? And I'm going, yeah, I'm not telling you to go buy a new $50,000 car when you make $40,000. That's insane. What I'm telling you to do is buy a $10,000 car. It's not a death trap, I promise. Go get a reliable $10,000 car, even if it has 100,000 miles. That's getting started if you got a Honda or a Toyota. And you'll be just fine. You will survive to tell the tale.
There's some crazy stats out there about people being in debt. Here you are promoting that, hey, do not go in debt. Don't get the credit score. So, George, I know you've shared them on the show. So share them with us right now. Some of those stats of why what you're saying is true and we need to be following it.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, where do I begin with the stats? Well, we know that half of the people that have credit cards can't pay off the balance in full. We know that 43% of those who use buy now, pay later fall behind on payments. And so the problem with it's really the human psyche is that we all have the best intentions. We go, well, Jamie, I'm going to pay it off perfectly every month. I'm never going to pay a dime in interest. Life's just going to work out. And then what does life do? Life punches you in the face. And there's a job loss, there's a health crisis, you miss the payment. And that's what causes people to go further into debt. Because when you're already stacked with payments with no margin and no savings, which we also know 4 in 10 Americans have $0 in savings, which is frightening. Well, what that's going to do is add stress to your life, and it's going to keep you reliant on the credit card companies paying 22 to 25% interest on that emergency. And that's why I advocate that you aggressively get out of the consumer debt, build an emergency fund so that you have that margin. Because when you become your own bank, you don't need to rely on lenders anymore. They can't build another skyscraper downtown while you can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment. And so we've got to stop thinking that the credit card companies and lenders, they're not our friend. They're not there to bless us with cashback rewards to get us home for Christmas on a free flight. They're there to get us into debt and keep us in debt. And if you don't believe that, you've got to look deeper in the stats, because I dig into that in the book. And Jamie, it is frightening how we got here. When I unpack the actual history of where did student loans come from? Where did credit cards come from? These are new inventions largely. Back in our parents' days and grandparents' days, these weren't even options. We just had to save up for things and pay cash. It was kind of like a no-no to go into debt for things if you talk to grandma. And here we are today going, leveraging debt is the path. Never use your own money. Use other people's money. That's the path to wealth. And it's being peddled by Instagram gurus and TikTokers who are trying to get you to buy their course. And it's not a path to peace.
So wouldn't you say that's what's causing inflation?
Well, that's the funny part is everyone's complaining about inflation.
But I'm like, if we're all spending money that we really don't have, right? And it seems very logical that it would be because we're using our credit cards, we're taking out loans to pay for these expensive things that really none of us can afford because none of us have gotten a raise this last year to pay those high prices, but somehow we're still out there purchasing. So it means we're just going farther and farther in debt.
You should run for Congress, Jamie. This is what we need out there. This is logic. So what's happening is everyone's complaining that inflation's out of control. The Fed is trying to, manage the rates. So they're going, okay, we got to increase the rates to hopefully cool off inflation and curb the consumer spending. And what are the consumers doing? They're going further and further into debt because it's like monopoly money at this point. And what is that doing? It's causing this inflation crisis to be prolonged. And so I'm like, the same people complaining about inflation are the same people spending like they're in Congress, causing inflation to continue. And so it's kind of a funny thing. I think if we all used our own money, we would see the economy go to a beautiful place. Now, the idea of everyone becoming debt-free in America and causing the economy to crash, we don't have to worry about that. America will always be deeply in debt. It's the American way. But if I can just get your audience, the people listening, the Ramsey fans to go, we're going to live our lives debt-free and do our part to take care of our house, I think we would all have so much more peace, so much more margin, and we wouldn't be out there complaining about the latest headlines or the latest politicians because we would have wealth for ourselves. We don't have to rely on anyone else to get there.
I think it just feels overwhelming to get out of the debt, and it becomes a habit to be in debt. It just becomes a way of life that we've trained from the time we grow up. You saw your parents use the credit card. The whole time, it's just always, I don't even know if you see people use cash anymore. They don't even accept cash anymore. So I think it's just a way of life, and to train people to think differently is difficult, George. I personally have had problems with that. So that's why I'm asking you, what can we do to change our mindset when it comes to money and getting in debt?
I think the first step has nothing to do with money and has everything to do with your mindset. And that's the big paradigm shift where you go, okay, I'm done borrowing money. You got to stop the bleeding, right? You got to stop going into debt if you want to get out of debt. That's like a third grader can understand that concept. And yet what we do is we go, well, I'm going to try to pay this one off while continuing to use my credit card and go get a car loan, but I'm really going to try to pay off the student loans. And so we play this game of whack-a-mole, trying to do 17 things at once, and it doesn't work. So step one, you got to stop borrowing money, and you have to draw a line in the sand and say, we're going to be the type of person, the type of family that doesn't borrow money anymore. Once you do that, we now have a baseline. We can start. We can get on a budget and actually look at our income and expenses.
But George, what about the people who say, well, now I'm too embarrassed. I'm going to have to drive the clunker car. My kids aren't going to have all the new things. They're not going to be able to do club sports, which is now expensive, and all these things, or I'm going to have to work 3 more jobs and I won't be able to spend time with my kids. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think number one, we have a parenting crisis in America where parents have removed the word no from their vocabulary because they don't want to hurt feelings. They don't want to deal with the drama. And I don't know how you grew up, but we had rules in my house. We didn't just get to run the house and do whatever we wanted all the time. If the money wasn't there, mom and dad said, hey, we don't have the money for that right now. Here's what we can do instead. And I think parents need to start, setting those boundaries with the kids and going, we can't do all the things. We can't get Chick-fil-A tonight on the way home. We can't go to this camp because it's $3,000 and you're going to have to hurt feelings. And guess what? They're children who live under your roof, under your rules. And I think that's what we need to get back to some normalcy in America. And the other part you mentioned is parents going, what am I supposed to do here? Drive the clunker and be ashamed? I'm going, listen, nobody cares. We overestimate how much people are thinking about us. People are busy thinking about themselves. All right? And so I don't care what you drive. And the truth is no one cares. And if people are making fun of what you drive, you're probably on the right track because what they're driving is way beyond their means. And they have a $900 car payment that's stressing them out, all the while they make fun of your paid for car. So I think we need to normalize and celebrate the paid for $10,000 car that gets you from A to B safely. That is a wonderful blessing in your life. And it's for a short season. This is not a life sentence that you have to live in misery. People think the Ramsey plan is rice and beans, drive the beater car, you'll never enjoy life, have fun. It doesn't work like that. Dave drives very nice cars, plural, now. But back in the day, he was driving the Dave beater car. And that's exactly what I did. And it's got to be a short season of sacrifice if you want to get to where you want to go. Otherwise, enjoy your payments for the rest of your life and don't complain when you have nothing in retirement and you're miserable.
Yeah, you save for today so you can be happy tomorrow, right? So I can sleep and I don't have to stress every day and end up having health issues because I'm so stressed out about my money and worrying that I'm keeping up with the Joneses. I think that's a huge thing for people. And I think it's really hard to step out of that. And you mentioned just a little bit ago about going to college, right? And I was thinking when I was in school, they didn't have all these crazy loans. So it wasn't as expensive. I'm old. So school wasn't expensive. And it seemed like the more easier it came to get money to go to school, the higher the cost of school became and the more money the professors made and the schools made. But somehow all of us that were graduating, these kids graduating, don't even have jobs, right? And they're all in huge debt. And again, that's the whole thing. If you didn't take out the loan in the first place, like my dad would always say, you shouldn't take out a loan to go to school. You know, you will never be able to pay it back, especially if you're just going to be a teacher. I think more people need that mindset.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a racket out there. And I walk through the history of student loans in the student loans chapter of my book, Breaking Free from Broke. And it was wild to unpack it and see how it slowly unraveled from this well-intentioned thing decades ago into a massive money-making scheme that is now known as Sallie Mae and Navient and all these companies that are, you know, they privatize a public good for profit. And we talk about this in our documentary called Borrowed Future. You can watch it for free on YouTube. It's about an 80-minute documentary that unpacks the student loan crisis. And it's really disgusting when you see how they manipulated students into taking on all of this debt. Now, we need to address the fact that they signed the dotted line. That student, that parent, they signed the dotted line and said, yes, give me $50,000 at 8% interest. But at the same time, what the colleges did was go, well, if kids are going to take out monopoly money to fund this thing, the parents don't care because they want their own reputation. You know, it's at stake. They want their kids to go to the famous school and they're willing to put $100,000 down to make it happen. So the colleges went, well, let's keep raising tuition. Let's make the amenities fancier. Let's add in the water slide and the Michelin star cafeteria and forget about the education part. Don't talk about that. That's boring. The library, nobody cares. Just pump up the amenities and people will be willing to pay six figures plus in order to go here. And that's what's happened. And so that's what's caused, you know, the college tuition to skyrocket way beyond the rate of inflation. College tuition has far surpassed that. And it's not going anywhere. And I think we're seeing Gen Z start to push back against this and actually go back into the trades because they're going, I don't want to be like my brother and sister who are $150,000 in student loan debt making $40,000. I would rather go into the trades, pay $5,000 or $10,000 debt free, and then go make 50, 60 starting. And that's what we're seeing them start to do. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
What's really smart. I mean, I was just talking about this yesterday with some people about how a lot of these people that actually have lots of money are in trades. Like we were driving by these huge homes and we were like, well, I wonder what they do. And they go, well, he's an electrician. And this guy's over here a plumber. And I was talking to another lady and she was like, oh yeah, these people are loaded. And I said, well, what do they do? And they go, oh, he owns the air conditioning company. And I go, see, people think that, and he never went to college, and none of these guys did that I was mentioning. And it was interesting to me that they started out ahead going into something that at that time people were like, oh, you're not going to go to college? You're not going to go into debt? No, I'm going to go out and just start making money for myself. And then so they got a trade and now they're doing better than those who went to school. And I think that's a huge shift that's starting to happen. I hope it continues to happen because a lot of people have gotten burned and a lot of people are in student loan debt, credit card debt, my car loan debt. You just piled on, like you said, land of the free and the home of the broke.
That's it.
I really am starting to think that in a sense, because everybody I talk to, the main thing they say is, unless they're on the show and they're an expert, they're saying, how am I going to get by? I know a guy who's he's a surgeon. They have 8 kids. They're barely getting by. People are having a really hard time to have the money to do things they want to do. But like you said, maybe some of those things we shouldn't even be doing.
Well, right? I think there's a great reckoning that's happening now because people had lifestyle creep, which means the more money they made, the more money they spent. If you're a surgeon, you got to live like a surgeon. If you're a lawyer, you got to live like a lawyer. Regardless of your debt, you have to play this part, quote unquote, of a six-figure earner and drive the car that those people drive and have the house they drive. If you're driving an old beater car, living in a, renting a condo, and you have some big time job, then you don't want the shame and, all of the grief from your friends and family. And so a lot of it is because of the people around us, the inputs around us. And so you've got to put the blinders on and say, what is best for my family right now? And that might mean we got to sell the big house because we can't afford a $6,000 mortgage payment. We got to sell the car and downgrade to the beater. We have to stop with the subscriptions and the Uber Eats and the DoorDash and the Peacock and the Netflix. We're just inundated with, expenses all around us. And for a season, we've got to live like broke college kids again until we get to a better place, until we get to some foundation. And that's the path. If you don't have margin to invest, if you don't have margin to save for college, you're going to create generational trauma for your kids financially to where they're going to go into debt. And so be the first one in your family to break that chain and go, no, we're going to pay off our house and I'm going to be able to invest to leave my kids an inheritance so they never know debt. That's what I'm doing for my family today. I've got an 11-month-old girl. That's new since we last talked. And so it's changed the way I look at money and legacy. And it's helped me confirm why we wanted to live debt-free because we have options now. My wife stayed at home. She had a 9-year career here at Ramsey, and it was an easy decision financially and a hard one emotionally to leave and go, I want to be at home with our baby. And I went, okay, cool. Our budget's going to be just fine. We don't have any payments. And most Americans don't have that luxury. And it's a luxury and privilege that we worked our tails off to get to. And I hope and pray that everyone out there can experience that one day.
So we have to be brave. Because I think it's hard, right? You have to be brave that you can go without and you will survive. And then in the end, you're going to have what you have, right? Financial freedom.
Well, you'll have the thing we really want, which is we want to sleep well at night. We want joy in our house. We want freedom and options to have work be optional one day instead of I have to work till I'm 68 because X, Y, Z. And, I think it comes down to this. Not caring what other people think is a superpower in today's world. Most of our choices are made because of outside influences. It's a lack of boundaries. It's because someone else is going to think of this, and I don't want to hear it from my mother-in-law. And so we make all of these choices that we think are going to lead us to joy, and we end up miserable driving that nice car. We end up miserable living in that nice house because we didn't want to throw money away on rent. And that's most people today. We have anxiety through the roof and consumer levels through the roof, and there is a direct correlation.
Another correlation is you could quit your job and be okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a lot of people are unhappy at their jobs and they stay in that job and are miserable because they have to. They don't have that financial freedom to be like, I can take a month off. I can do this because they have all these bills to pay. They can't do that. And it's a huge thing. I didn't even think about it when you were just talking is like, you're no longer trapped. And I think that's the feeling people feel. They feel trapped.
Exactly. And that's why I titled it Breaking Free from Broke. I wanted a visceral, actionable thing of it's time to break free from the chains, from the maze, from the trap that's been created for us that, yes, we stepped into, but also someone created for us. There's a both and here. And I don't think you can change your life until you realize that, until you take accountability and you go, okay, life didn't just happen to me. I made choices that got me to where I am. And regardless of what happened in the past, how I grew up, what things happened to me, I'm going to make tomorrow different. The future is going to be different for my family. Those are the people that I meet that I'm inspired by, that come do debt-free screams on the Ramsey Show. They're everyday people who just one day woke up and said, enough is enough. I worked too hard to feel this broke. And then they go do something about it.
Okay, I got a question here for you. This is a hard one, maybe, George.
Oh, boy.
But I know people do. You do a call-in show, so I think you can handle this one. So what if you're in a relationship and as a married couple, one wants to get out of debt, the other one doesn't. So what do you do in those scenarios?
That is the $1 million question that we get on the Ramsey Show. I'll be hosting it today, and people will call in and say, listen, I'm on board with the Ramsey plan, but my spouse, Ramsey is a cuss word in the house, and anytime I bring it up, it becomes a blow-up argument. And so there's a few ways to go about this. It's different for everyone. The timeline is different for everyone. I wish there was one sentence I could give you to go, if you just say these words, magic will happen, right? There's so many variables in a relationship depending on how that person grew up. What is the real fear behind it? What are they worried about? And usually if you just dig in with some empathy instead of attacking and going, we got to get on this plan, you got to sell your car, usually that's how it goes, right? You wake up one day, you read the Total Money Makeover, you read Breaking Free from Broke, and you went, honey, things are going to be different starting today. And they go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where was the guy yesterday that was out spending like he was in Congress? What happened to him? And so number one, they're going, I know your track record. Why are you all of a sudden the guy that's going to take us to glory? And so number one, you have to lead with empathy and go, I have done a poor job helping steward the finances in our family. I've not done a great job previously, and I am guilty, and I want to make a change personally. Are you willing to go on this journey with me? Because two become one when we got married. I want a different future for our family. Here's the future. Let's paint the picture of what that looks like together. Let's dream. Okay, here's our current reality. We are $100,000 in debt. What is the gap? How do we reverse engineer this to get to where we want to go? Now we can start looking at the options, and it might be their idea to go, well, I guess we could sell the car. I mean, it's worth 40 and we only owe 30. That would give us 10,000 and we could use that to buy. Now they have some buy-in. And so that's what you're really looking for when you're trying to get a spouse on board. And sometimes that takes math. You might need to show them the math of how it's possible. All right, it's going to take us 18 months. If we do the X, Y, and Z, here's how we're going to get there. Sometimes you need to lead with the emotion and go, here's what I'm really worried about. I haven't told you this. I haven't been sleeping well because I've been worried about the bills and what happens if, this health thing happens or the job thing happens and how we're going to make it to tomorrow. So when you lead with your own fears, your own dreams, and then you invite them into that conversation, I found they're much more receptive versus attacking them with your excitement about the plan. And so that's the way it's worked for many, many people. And I wish you best of luck. Financial Peace University is a great tool where you both can kind of create that shared language together, because that's what most couples are missing. They grew up on different sides of the railroad tracks. One person's going this way, the other one's going this way. And you need to have that common shared values, shared language. And most of us just have never talked about it. And so it's awkward at first.
Yeah, we just got to talk about it. I had Jason Tardik on the podcast a while back, and that's what he said. He has his book about love and money, and how you need to talk about money in your relationships, because there's a huge sense of contention.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. And the level of just communication, it's one of those, like, we know in a marriage, like, what is a marriage built on? Well, communication, trust, honesty. And yet we don't do that with our money. We don't talk about it. We tend to hide things. We have separate accounts, and we don't really trust our spouse. And so all of that just sort of brushes everything under the rug, and let's not talk about it, because remember last time we had that big blow up fight. And so we just go about our day growing apart instead of together, and we don't get any closer to our financial goals.
Okay. So you said you don't have any credit cards. You don't have anything like that. What do you do when you have a major emergency and you don't have the savings yet? And I don't have the savings yet. And I didn't expect to get in my car to break down. I have that $10,000 car, broke down. It probably didn't, maybe it didn't even have full coverage. So whatever, right? Liability. And so my car is done. I don't have money to buy a new one. What am I going to do? Or if you have health issues, do you get up the credit card? What is a person supposed to do in those scenarios?
Ooh, okay. So I'm picturing this. They have no debt. So let's say that this is baby step 3 of the Ramsey plan. They're out of consumer debt, and now they're working on the emergency fund, but let's say they only have the $1,000.
They got $1,000. That's it.
What are we going to do? Number one, you mentioned this, which is great. The prerequisite here is insurance. You've got to be on defense while you're working on the offense. And most people are either underinsured or they don't have insurance in certain areas. And so you got to make sure you have health insurance in place. Don't go a day without health insurance. I don't care what it costs. You need that in place. That can ruin people financially and cause bankruptcy. And number 2, you got to have auto insurance, and you got to have renter's insurance, and whether homeowner's insurance if you're a homeowner. Those are the big ones. It's great to have term life in place as well. This is super affordable for folks. You can get like $1 million policy for, $30-$50 a month that will cover you in case something happens to you to replace your income. And so those are some good pieces to have in place on the defense. But what do they do if this big thing happens? Well, number 1, you pause the baby steps. So now our one job is to fund this emergency. And most emergencies are not like, I need this thing tomorrow. We can usually get by, whether it's, hey, we're going to rent a car for a little bit. We're going to borrow a car from a friend. We're going to figure it out. What would you do if debt was not an option? You would just figure it out. You would ask around family, friends. You'd carpool to work for a little bit. You might be down to 1 car instead of 2. We can make that work for a short time while we just stack up cash. You also might need to go sell a bunch of stuff and create more income through side hustles. And all of that combined, we found very few instances where people are really in that bind because they were stuck. Because you just figure it out when debt's not on the table as an option, and you just get back on the horse and you move on. And we found that most people overinflate the level of emergency they're going to have while following the Ramsey plan, because they go, well, George, what if I have $100,000 emergency that I need the money tomorrow? I'm like, when has that really happened? You know, a medical bill you can kick down the road.
I don't mean to cut you off there, but George, for example, I had an emergency.
Real life?
This is real life. I'm giving you a real life life.
Okay, I like this.
Okay, so this is real life. I was chewing gum. My tooth breaks off in my gum, right? So now I have this tooth problem. The tooth problem escalates. It becomes a major issue where it's up to $4,500 issue, right? Now, what do I do? And I said, well, do you do payment plans? No, we don't do payment plans. Do you do credit cards, right? So yeah, you can put it on your credit card, or you can sign up for their care credit plan, which is also high interest. I think it has interest and it can be dangerous, right? They say no interest, but if you don't pay it, then it goes high interest. So those were my options, or you have to pay cash. Well, what if I wouldn't have had the cash?
Yeah,
I personally got lucky and I made more money to hurry and pay for it. I figured it away. Figured a way.
Now, to be fair, in a hypothetical situation, we go,
okay,
well, here's what you can do.
What if they didn't have that opportunity? Do you know? Well, I mean, what do you do?
You know, I would really work with them to go, listen, can I negotiate this? If I pay in cash, can I get a cash discount? What is that going to be? And here's the bill. It's due. You know, can we have this due at the end of the month or this next month? Because usually they'll send you the bill from the dentist. It's fairly rare where they're like, you got to pay. You won't leave this room before you pay in full today. You know, usually they'll send you the bill and you'll go, okay, I'm going to pay next month or next month. And if it goes to collections and you got to deal with that, then you have to deal with that. But there's still a piece of this where you go, if I'm willing to go into debt for this, I'm going to be willing to go into debt for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So there has to be that moment where you go, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be like Jamie and go, if debt is not an option, what am I going to do? I'm going to work my tail off to cover this, and then I'm going to work my tail off to make sure this doesn't happen again by building my own emergency fund. And that's a pretty short period of time where you're going without, a full emergency fund. And the truth is, most people don't have one to begin with. And so, if, back to that stat, 4 in 10 people have $0 in savings. So it's not like you were in a great place before you were following the Ramsey plan. You were going to have to go put it on a credit card at 22% interest, which is not a helpful scenario either.
No, it's not.
That's a rough
and
place
I'm sure
to be.
you could, I was even thinking, George, I was like, well, I maybe have to go to a different dentist because these people wanted it up front.
That's another thing is most people don't shop around.
And I was like, I'll go shop around. I thought this is pretty extreme to have to pay this all up front. And the reason it was so extreme is because I had just had a crown put on the other tooth for $2,500. So it was like in a course of a month, it was about close to $7,000 in dental work.
This is a good reminder, your teeth, you get one of them, unless you get some like veneers later in life, but that you got to take care of that stuff. And if you let it prolong, it gets expensive. The cavity turns into the root canal, turns into the crown, which are meant for royalty. That's why they're so, it's why the name is there. It's why it's so expensive. So
I love that, George. What you're saying and makes me really think about how if you really commit yourself to something and you don't give yourself that option, chances are you'll figure it out. You just have to believe that you can. And I think that's the thing we have started to believe we can't. And we just take the easier route, which ends up actually being the harder route and leads to a lot of stress, fighting, lying. Let's just be honest. Our life becomes a lie. We're sitting there living a life that we can't afford. And I think internally that does something to you. You're always worried that someone's going to find out that I'm actually $100,000 in debt and I'm not as rich as I look like I am. But maybe social media is a play to that. Maybe there's more to it that we're not even discussing when it comes to why we feel that pressure to live that lie.
The gap between your reality and what you're trying to put out there as a facade on social media, it's exhausting. There's a soul tax you pay when you have to pretend like everything's okay every day to appease everyone else. And the truth is, if you've got a good community, good friends, good family, you can be honest and say, we can't go on that cruise. We can't afford that. I can't afford to go on the destination wedding. And we've just had a harder time because of, the social upkeep of appearances to go, I can't do that. I have to say no to that. And I think that's one of the keys to getting out of debt. You have to say no to a lot in order to say yes to the future freedom that you're wanting. And it's a hard thing to do. What I'm asking people to do is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's why many people go, nah, I'll go follow some get-rich-quick dude on Instagram and buy his course for $1,000 because he promised to change my life overnight. And it's funny when people say, oh my gosh, you guys changed our life. We immediately have to go, no, we didn't. We didn't change your life. You changed your life. You did all the hard work. I didn't take on a side hustle to get you out of debt. You did. We just showed you that it was possible. And I love the quote from Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And too many people think they don't have agency, they don't have autonomy, they've given it up and resigned it to, well, the next political administration hopefully will forgive my debt. Well, maybe my kids will inherit my debt, I'll just die with it and I'll live a miserable life in the meantime. I think we were meant for more. I think we were created for more, to have more impact, to have more freedom, more margin. And if you're willing to just work 2 to 3 years is what we're asking here to get out of debt and build the emergency fund, the next 20 to 30 years will be so much better.
Well, I believe you. I know the pain of debt. I've had it before, and it's horrible. It's horrible. I
would not recommend. 0
I
out
wouldn't
of 10.
recommend it to anybody because it's very stressful. And like if you're in a couple, there's fighting, the whole thing is just miserable. And that day you're debt free is an amazing feeling, and I would recommend it to anyone. And that's why I love the Ramsey team and I always have you guys on, is because I'm a firm believer in being debt free. Now, this is going to be my second to last question because it's still playing on my mind because I still don't know how you did it. How did you get a credit score again? How did you get your home without a credit score? How did you get that mortgage? I mean, can you kind of give me a little play by play? Because
Absolutely.
That was the thing that's always held me back. And so, I was doing the credit card. I pay it off at the end of the month to build up my credit score so I could buy the home I'm in. But if I wouldn't have had to do that, how do I do it?
So there's a few pieces to this. Number one, you find a lender that can actually do these, that's willing to do these. Most lenders, truthfully, they're just too lazy. They go, we don't want to fuss with it. But there's plenty of lenders out there that do this. There's multiple. The one that we've recommended for decades now is called Churchill Mortgage, and they're the number one. They specialize in these types of mortgages because they help Ramsey fans get into homes. And so it's the one type of debt we don't yell at you for if you do it the Ramsey way, which means 15-year fixed rate where the payment's no more than a quarter of your take-home pay. I know that's aggressive in today's world, but the reason we're so conservative is because too many people call in and they go, George, I got my mortgage is 55% of my take-home pay. What do I do? And I'm going, well, you can't. How are you going to put food on the table, cover the rest of your expenses when your mortgage is taking up that much of your world? And so that's what most people do. They take on as big of a mortgage as possible on a 30-year and just fingers crossed we'll pay it off before we die or before we retire. That's a bad plan. So when it comes to these loans, you have to have a few things. Number one, you need verification of income over the last 12 to 24 months. So your tax returns, that's an important piece of this. You've got to have rental payment history. So 12 months of documented payment history. And what's cool is even if you rent from family, if it's just documented that you made a consistent payment on time every month, they can count that. Oh. The next thing is a 12-month history of bank statements. They want to see that this is legitimate, that you have consistent income, consistent savings. And then lastly, as an alternative trade line, you can send in, a utility bill, anything that you pay, as a cell phone bill, anything you paid on time every month. That's what they use. So they use all of that and go, okay, this person is a qualified, a person to lend to, and they give you the loan. And I got an excellent interest rate. That's another thing people think it's super expensive. It's going to take forever.
Yeah.
It took a few weeks like a normal process would, and I got the equivalent rate of someone that had a great credit score, even though mine didn't exist. And many people have done this. I'm not a special story. They didn't give this to me because I'm a Ramsey guy. I'm just a normal guy who followed this process, and it's definitely possible, but people just don't want to believe it. They want to keep playing the game. And so they go, whoa, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or maybe it worked for him, but it's not going to work for me. And that's the big thing holding people back from letting go of the credit score. But since not having one, and I'm telling you, once you get the paid for house, which that should be the new American dream, right? Is no payments to anyone. You get all the options. That's when you go, why was I so worried about the credit score? Like when you're on the other side of it, you go, anytime someone brags to me about their credit score, I just kind of laugh it off as a silly flex. Because the real scoreboard we should be looking at is, how much actual wealth do you have? What do you have in your investment account? What do you have in your savings account? Not how much do you owe someone else and what did that do to your precious 3-digit score? I think that's less relevant as far as how someone's really doing financially.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So George, my last question, what is your favorite money tip?
Ooh, I'm going to go with a piece of my Smart Spender plan. So the Smart Spender plan is 5 questions you ask that helps you make the right spending decisions. So the S is for self-awareness. Is this going to add value to my life? The M is for motive. Am I buying this for the right reason? A is for affordability. Can I actually afford this in full, in cash? Is it in the budget? The R is for research. Is this the best option, retailer, and price? And the T is for timing. This is opportunity cost. Is now the time to buy it or can it wait? And so the one I want to focus on for the tip is the R for research. Too many people are out there impulsively shopping. At the time of this recording, we just experienced Prime Day and everyone just bought, add to cart, and they thought they were getting a deal. Turns out the next day, the prices were even cheaper once Prime Day was over, and they got hosed because they didn't do the research. And so I use tools. There's one called Honey. You can add it as a browser extension. It'll automatically apply promo codes and find discounts for you. There's another tool called camel.com. It's an Amazon price tracker, so you can actually see the history of that exact item and go, oh, this is actually not a good price. It actually drops down about every 2 months. I'm going to wait and get a notification once the price goes down. And that level of just, asking for discounts, even if it's in person. I've done this before. Hey, is there a discount if I pay in cash? I've literally just been nice to a guy at Home Depot once, and he said, you know what? The manager lets me have a discretionary discount once a day, and you're just a really nice guy, and I'm going to give it to you. And I went, oh my gosh, thank you. Just be kind to employees. Don't be a jerk. Be kind. Ask. Don't be scared. You got to kind of have no shame to just go, hey, are you guys offering any discounts right now? Is there any way I can get the price lower? You'd be shocked at how many times you can get a better price. And to me, that's way better than trying to build up credit card rewards because I have agency. I don't have to spend money to save money, and I'm in control. And so that's my tip is do your research, use the tools that are out there to help you get a better deal and spend smart.
Those are all really good tips. I mean, it's like 100 of them right there that I loved. The one I liked the best was the Amazon Prime one. I'm going to go download those apps, George. Can you say those again? What were they? Honey,
so
and what was the other one?
Camel.com with a C, not a K. So no relation to this George Kamel. Camel.com, and then Honey, which has now been bought by PayPal, but they've got a browser extension that I have loaded up in my mobile Safari on my, on desktop, and it'll just pop up as I'm checking out any website and say, hey, we found 7 promo codes. You want us to apply them for you? And half the time or more, it'll go, hey, we just saved you 20% because we found the promo code. And so we're all kind of lazy. We're convenience shoppers. We don't want to go spending an hour, but just doing a little bit of research and comparing prices will help you kind of just have a little pep in your step and confidence to go, I made the right decision. I have no regret, no consumer regret. I made the right choice when it came to this money. And, we work hard for the money and it should be working hard for you. And so with the money you save, you can invest it, you can give it, and have fun with it.
George, your advice is priceless. And in fact, it's going to save me some money today because I have to go buy some things and I'm going to use it. And I hope everybody takes George's advice and follows George on, what is your social handles? Is it just George Kamel or is it under the Ramsey?
With a K. Yep, everywhere. Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, georgekamel.com. And you can get the book as well, Breaking Free from Broke, at RamseySolutions.com. And I should mention, we have a great EveryDollar budgeting app. It's free. You can go download it in the App Store or go to everydollar.com/George. And that's a great free tool to actually manage your money, to get that reality check that we talked about of where are we actually at? I know we're making good money, but it's disappearing into the abyss. Well, that's where budgeting comes in to help you create that intentional spending plan. So be sure to check that out because that's the key to our plan.
I just reviewed the apps and I actually put EveryDollar as one of the apps for people to use. It's one of the good ones.
Thank you so much.
So make sure everybody goes and does that. And again, George, thanks for coming on the show and thanks for writing your book. I loved it. I truly did love it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for writing it.
Thank you, Jamie. Always a pleasure to be with you.
And thanks for being with us for this conversation. We'll see you again for more great insight, inspiration, and how you can take financial control of your life.